tell me when. We're testing. Sound is good. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about some strategic tips for telemarketing. So many people have a fear of picking up the phone. 2 reasons why. Number 1, they have a fear of failure. Number 2, they have a fear of sounding like a salesperson. And you want to overcome that. I'm going to share some tips about that today. One thing you want to have, I'm going to talk about 3 really key important areas. One of them is just having a number of different lists to use. Where do you come up with lists? I have a number of areas up here. I want to talk about just a couple on the right side. One is referrals. I don't think we ask for enough referrals from the people we know all the time. And especially too, if you're going to networking meetings, talk to people and ask them, hey, if in the next week or 2 you can think of anyone that you could refer me to, I'd really appreciate it. So ask for more referrals. Another key area is just trade leads with someone in a similar industry. I had worked for Swank Audiovisuals in my sales career, and I had 3 business owners who were event planners, and I worked with audiovisual, and we traded leads that worked great. So something to keep in mind there. Keep in mind to use your reference list at the local library. That's free. And then another good source, of course, is List Source Brokers. I highly recommend infousa.com. Over my 11.5 years in business, over 90% of my clients provide me with lists from infousa.com. They're very strong, and you give them all the demographics you want for that list to create it. All right, let's talk about the next area that's real important is developing a script. What do you want to say in the script? 3 key areas. You have an introduction, a body, and a close. In the introduction, you share information about yourself and your company. In the body, you want to talk about maybe some qualifying information. You want to know how you differentiate yourself from the competition, as well as share benefits and how you help them with your company areas that you service and product with. And then your close is always very simple. The purpose of my call today, I'd like to set up a meeting with you. Or do you want to set up a phone call? Or do you want to set up a webinar? Do you want to set up a Zoom session? Be very finite on the reason for your call, and then you share that in the close. It works great. So the next thing we're going to do is look at a couple scripts and how they work that format. The first one, I made it as big as I can so I can read it. It's very, very set straight. I love this. You've got, oops, that was quick. Turn that back. So right here, this is the introduction, this is the body, and this is the close. So we can read it. Hello, my name is John. I'm with Eyres Environmental Services. We provide environmental consulting and waste management for the items you're currently disposing. Our prices typically reduce our clients 20 to 40%. Eyres will work with you every step of the way to develop feasible alternatives, identify the most compliant, cost-effective option. We're committed to providing the highest level of service, safety, convenience, delivered on time by highly trained professionals. The purpose of my call today is to set up a brief 15-20-minute meeting with you to introduce our company and find out exactly what your hazardous waste materials are and save you money. Then you would say, my best days to meet are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. What works best for you next week? Simple, easy, sweet. Let's take a look at another 2 examples. What can really work well for you if you have clients in a particular industry. You want to craft a script up and have clients that you can share that you've done work with in that industry. It works great. You can also then purchase a list, maybe 250 or 300 companies in that industry in the St. Louis area. Very, very targeted. So here's 2 samples, the same script, but different industries we're working in. So this first one, they work with banks, and we even share the bank industry that they've worked in. Hi, my name is John. I'm calling from Blue Moon Creative. We are a local marketing public relations firm experienced in the banking industry. We did some research about your bank and thought we might be a good fit for you. So we help banks to develop a stronger brand identity through messaging and graphic design, public relations, and social networking. We also build secure platform websites and help you in consumer direct marketing as well. Banking and finance have long been one of our strongest client areas, so we're very familiar with getting results for your industry. What a key line there. Over the years, we've worked with the Bank of Jerseyville, Commercial State Bank of Alton, Collinsville Bank and Savings, the Bank of Edwardsville. My purpose for the call today is to set up a meeting with you and share our story and expertise in the banking area. My best days to meet or blah, blah, blah. So when you can craft up a script like this and actually share clients that you've worked with in that industry, that person you're talking to, they really think, wow, they know me, they get my industry, I would like to set up a meeting with that person. Great, great revenue stream here when you can work in that industry and you've got clients to share. Now, we're going to just move to a different industry with the next script. It's basically the same script. All we're doing is changing to whoops, got to watch that flipper. So here we're looking with experience in the manufacturing industry. We basically say the same message about what we do and how we do it. And then we talk about manufacturing has been one of our strongest client areas, so we're very familiar with getting results for your industry. Then we share clients in that industry and just close with the purpose of my call. It is I want to share my story and our expertise in that industry. It works very, very well. When we do calling for companies and use a script similar to this, we get higher results and better meeting areas. Let's go on. Isn't this a great shot of me when I was a baby? Yeah, my mom had the fortitude to put headsets on, and yeah, she knew John's going to grow up and be a telemarketer, you know. When you introduce yourself on the phone, make sure you're positive, you're happy. You want to be making that call because it comes through on the phone on the other end. So be like a baby, no inhibitions, dial, and have that smile going. You might think about, what's the connection that I'm going to talk to about with this person, or maybe share the specific industries, companies that you've worked with. We just showed that in the script sample. And then use questions maybe to prospect and interact with that person on the phone. And then also, sometimes if you can't get the person, so many times we get passed to a voicemail, leave a very well-crafted voicemail message. And what about voicemail? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's take a look at a sample before we go there, I'm going to talk about your sales matrix, knowing the numbers you dial. So by raise of hands today, how many of you in the room know your sales matrix numbers for calling on the phone, if you utilize it quite a bit? 2, 3, 4, 5, good. So this is real important. If you want to set up, let's say, 8 meetings a week, which will help yield maybe 4 proposals for you a week, you need to keep track of all your call dialing that you do, keep track of the people that you talk to, and keep track of the people that you set up a meeting with so you know your numbers. So in this example, I have to talk to 30 people on the phone to get 8 meetings set up. To talk to 30 people live, I have to make 100 dials as my goal. So now I know my matrix numbers. 100 dials on the phone each week will help me connect live with 30 people that I'm actually talking to on the phone. And from those 30 people, I'm going to set up 8 meetings a week, live, in person. So then you know, okay, if you make 25 dials an hour, you've got to spend at least 4 hours a week making calls and be faithful and persistent to it. That's a key. It's huge. If you only make 20 dials an hour, you've got to spend 5 hours a week. But that way you'll get your numbers, you make those dials, you're going to talk to X amount of people and get your meetings set up. But knowing the sales matrix numbers is really important when you sit down to call. It's very, very important. Okay, let's move on. Here's a great venue to leave a voicemail message. 2 key areas. When you leave a message, make sure you give them your cell phone number and tell them the best time to call you back. So I've got my voicemail that I leave. My name is John Eyres. My company is Business Connections Consulting. I'm calling about the outbound telemarketing services we provide as an outsourced cost-saving solution for your company to add new business leads, build your pipeline, and increase revenue. My cell phone number is 314-495-2089. The best time to reach me is after 4 p.m. each business day. Thanks and have a successful day. Boom. At least in the voicemail, people who are going to respect that voicemail, they will call you back. They know that they're calling your cell phone, and they know the best time to call you. And then work your tail off to answer the phone when that time that you give them rings. You might follow up just an email message with them 2 or 3 days after that voicemail. Again, it's a second hit, and that voicemail just reiterates a little bit more, and you tell them again, the best time to reach me is after 4 p.m., call my cell phone, but that email will help, again, maybe remind them, because we're so busy, we get so many emails, we get so many different voicemail messages, it just depends. It just is a second kind of what I call a hit or attack to remind them, hey, I got to call John Eyres. Last thing I want to talk about is the psyche of calling. Again, remember, we have a fear of calling. Many people just don't like to pick up the phone and make that call. What it is, it's a fear factor. So I'm going to share 3 key points here. These are areas how people typically see cold calling. So you've got to be aware, these are the areas that you, as a person making the calls, you look at it, oh, I'm fearful, it's boring, it's unhappy, it's unproductive, it's demoralizing. Be aware of that. That's really important. The next area is, how do the customers on the other end of the phone, how do they look at telemarketing? So here's some of the areas. It's a nuisance, it's unwanted, it's insulting, it's disrespectful, maybe it's shady and evasive. But when you're aware of that, if you need to turn that around and have a good script, practice that script 50, 60 times, take an hour practicing it, so it's very fluid. It's like you're just talking to it like you woke up from a nap. And here's what you want to have. This is successful calling and what it should look like. Honest and open, straightforward, professional, very businesslike, enthusiastic, upbeat, credible, reliable, thought-provoking. So these are the characteristics you want to have to look at when you make that call. Very important. In closing today, I wanted to share a promo that I'm running. It's a 2-hour training, one-on-one with you. I have a workbook that I wrote a couple years ago. It's called The Art and Science of Cold Calling. So I'll teach and train you from that book. It highlights 3 areas: how to work with different lists, script development, and I'll work with you on your script and develop it and tweak it. And then the third is a lot of tips and techniques and strategies to make you a better caller. So it's a promotional, it's including a 30-minute phone call after the training session, week or 2 or 3 weeks later, with me to do follow-up with you. And so it's a $550 value. I'm offering it the E4E promo today for $300. And if you want information about it, here's my contact information. All right, that is my presentation. Let's open up for any questions that anyone might have. Sean? It's coming to you with the...
Lisa first. We're taking a
Lisa.
sidetrack.
Oh, you have a question? Okay.
And it's not really a question.
Okay.
It's my rah-rah library. Info USA is free through the library if you have a St. Louis County or city card.
Okay. I didn't know if it was Info USA. Okay.
John, you had something on one of your slides about LinkedIn when you were talking about developing your list. Can you comment on that?
I'm not real specialized at LinkedIn, but we've had clients that have articulately worked their LinkedIn clients and created lists from that. It does very, very well, but I believe it's time consuming on their end, but it has worked very well. So we have called their LinkedIn connections, use that as a part of the script, and usually do very well because they know that's an identified contact that they're chasing.
John, do you always leave a voicemail when you're cold calling for your customers?
No. 90% of the time when we call for our clients as a telemarketing hired company, we don't leave voicemails. We work to talk to people live, share the message and the story of that client. Cynthia?
I just wanted to mention Josh Levy knows how to export your LinkedIn contacts into a spreadsheet that then you could use
Okay.
for cold calling.
Steve?
John, that list of feelings that people have when they, yeah, I have all of those. But
Okay.
you may feel free to rap me on the knuckles for this, but something that I've done that has worked a little bit for me because I have those feelings about cold calling is that I've intentionally called, asked for getting the person's voicemail. And for me, that has worked, probably not ideal, but it has worked a little bit, and I've gotten some business that way. So there's probably a better way to do it, but that helped me a little bit.
Good comment.
I just have a question about what is your take on when you're calling to maybe spin it with, I won't learn more about what you do and what makes a good referral for you. How does that weigh, I guess, against just coming right out and saying what you do?
So I'm trying to understand, when you call and talk to that person, what are you trying, do you start out the conversation with, what is it you're starting with?
I guess I have in the past, I've called and said, this is who I am, I'm with this company, I'd really like to get to know what you do and what makes a good referral for you. So I guess it's just a spin, but I didn't know how that weighed against just being more straightforward and saying what you do.
Whatever works for you, I think, is key. Again, when individuals, like everyone in the audience today, when you're making calls, it's very different compared to when my company is making a call for a client that we're calling for. Different scenario. But you always have that widespread area to use whatever it's going to work. And maybe if the goal is to get a coffee set-up meeting, that's a good way to start.
I found it to be true in my former life that one of the toughest things about telemarketing can be voicemail. People tend to hide behind voicemail. It was amazing to me how many times I would get someone answering the phone if I either called early, called at lunch, or called late. You'd be astounded between 7 a.m. and 7:30 in the morning how many executives are at their desk. They haven't got up, they haven't gone to meetings, and they actually answer the phone.
Good point. So some of your key areas to call, depending upon who you're trying to reach, if it's a C-level person, 7 to 8 a.m. is great, noon to 1, and then 4:30 to 6 o'clock is a golden time.
I think we're done.
Good. Thank you.